Good Erev Shabbat. With the last 5 parshiot of the book of Shemot, there's a dramatic shift that takes place. Until now, the Jewish people are mainly in a state of passivity. God is taking care of almost everything. But with this week's parsha of Terumah and the building of the Mishkan, there's a sudden shift. The people have to all get involved, really for the first time. These are slaves who until now had no responsibility, and now they're being asked to become activists, leaders, and builders. Some of them got involved hands-on with fashioning the different parts of the Mishkan. Others contributed large sums of gold, silver, or copper. And others were involved in the planning and organization. So you have hands-on contributions and vision. And so with our Parsha, it begins finally to become a true partnership between Hashem and the Jewish people who are now engaged in action. In one of his letters, the Rabbi wrote that one action is better than 1,000 sighs. Hashem is alive and the Torah and its mitzvos are eternal. Abandon sighing, abandon crying. Apply yourself diligently to actual deeds, and God will be gracious to you. Because one action is greater than 1,000 ideas, you have to go ahead and do it emor ma'at va'aseh harbe. And this notion that Judaism celebrates human initiative and action impacts a halachic question relating to this upcoming Shabbat of Parshat Zachor, when we fulfill the mitzvah of remembering Amalek's senseless attack upon the Jews. And then you have on Purim itself, which is next Friday, we perform the mitzvah of listening to Megillat Esther, which describes the salvation from the plot of Haman, a descendant of Agag, king of Amalek. But what would be the halacha? What would be the law if a person is only able to attend minyan for one of the 2 readings, but not both? If a villager can afford to travel only one time to the city shul, or a doctor with a heavy call schedule can only attend one time, or in a pandemic, when for some reason a socially distanced minyan can only be cobbled together one time, or you can only choose to attend shul one time, either this Shabbat for Zachor or for Purim Megillah next week, which should you choose? Rabbi Israeline, 15th century Austrian rabbi, writes in his book Terumah that the person should choose to attend minyan on Shabbat, Parsha Zachor. And the reason is that most assume that you require a minyan for the reading of Zachor, while for the reading of the Megillah, a minyan is preferable, but if necessary, it can be performed and fulfilled by an individual. Moreover, Zachor is a Torah mitzvah, while Megillah is only rabbinic. And therefore, writes the Terumah, go to shul this Shabbat to hear Parsha Zachor. It's a daraisa, and it's required to have a minyan. And the Magen Avram, 17th century Poland, disagrees and proposes what sounds like an ingenious solution. He suggests that if you could only choose one, choose to go to shul for the morning of Purim to hear the Megillah with a minyan. And while in shul, on that same morning, one can fulfill the mitzvah of remembering Amalek with the Torah reading of Parshat Beshalach, which is read prior to the Megillah. Beshalach, after all, is where the Torah relates the actual war itself with Amalek, the raising of Moshe's hands, and Aaron and Hur helping him keep his hands up for an extended period of time. And so this sounds like a great solution. The villager or the doctor, in our example, can attend shul on Purim morning and kill 2 birds with one stone, so to speak. Do both mitzvot on one morning, and thereby fulfill both Zachor with the reading of Beshalach, and then you hear the reading of Megillah on Friday morning, both with a minyan. However, Rabbi Yisrael Kagan, the Chavetz Chaim, and now we're in the 20th century, explains forcefully that there's a flaw in the solution of the Magen Avram. Because the obligation of Zachor is not only that we shouldn't forget, but that rather we need to relate it actively, proactively, to our children and grandchildren. Moreover, Timche et Zecher Amalek. We have to actively do all we can to eliminate everything that Amalek stands for, which is the glorification of war and the denying of God and saying that everything in this world is happenstance. We have to Timche et Zecher. We have to erase everything that Amalek stands for actively. And all of this is not alluded to with the reading of the war itself in Parshat Beshalach. In Beshalach, and simply the historical rendering of what happened. It tells the story, but obligates us to nothing. And so in Beshalach, it's God who says, Macho emche, I, God, will blot out Amalek, but there's no responsibility placed upon you and me, upon the human being. In Parshat Ki Teitzei, on the other hand, that's Parshat Zachor, because that frames the Amalek story as obligating the person to Zachor, to always remember and tell the future generations. And Timcha, you have a responsibility to counter Amalek and the Iranian regime that wants to destroy Israel, and Hamas and groups like it. What we see from here is that the celebration of the notion of action and Jewish memory as well can't be passive, but rather has to be active. And for this reason, the Magen Avram is wrong, says the Mishnah Berurah, and the Terumah Sadeshin is correct, and that you could be Yotzei, the mitzvah of Zachor, only with Ki Teitzei, but not with the reading of the Torah Purim morning, which is the award itself, and that obligates the individual to nothing. And this is why when we sent out the guidelines, we did not propose the idea of coming to Shul Purim morning, firstly because if you can't attend for Zachor, you likely can't attend for Purim, but also because the Mishnah Berurah says you're not Yotzei the mitzvah on Purim morning of Parshat Zachor. And therefore, for those who cannot attend on Shabbat, what we're recommending is read from a Chumash, which according to one opinion is considered a fulfillment, but mark on your calendar Parshat Ki Teitzei this summer, August 21st, to attend Shul to fulfill the mitzvah of Zachor at that time. And this is the central Jewish notion of taking responsibility for our destiny. This is our dissatisfaction with our current state of affairs, and to always try to grow and to make a difference. And the lessons learned from past events are a call to action to us, to actively stand up and fight hatred and anti-Semitism, which is Zachor, to stand up and fight poverty, to stand up and take action like building the Mishkan and performing mitzvah, which the Jewish people are asked to do in this week's parsha, finally getting involved and being in a partnership with Hashem. Because after all is said and done, it's not enough to believe in God, and it's not appropriate just to wait for Hashem to do it for us. We must try ourselves to make things happen, and then God will help us be successful. God protects and saves, but only if we spring into action. And so our first confrontation with Iran was the story of Purim. And on Purim, Mordechai told Esther that you have to get involved and approach the king, even though this is putting your life on the line, because God only helps those who help themselves. And if we move, then God will move mountains. We're not just nourished passively by God's chesed, but we're actively ennobled by that chesed. Zachor and Purim is a call to all of us to action. Shabbat Shalom.